Breaking news in the bourbon world, a brand new label just dropped on TTB, and it is something that collectors are going to be just dying to get. Elmer T. 40th Anniversary. We're going to talk about what this bourbon is, what we know, what we don't know, and what to expect from this. And you know what? Will we ever find it? Let's get right into it. How are y'all doing today? My name's Chris. Welcome back to Bourbon Sane. Scrolling through Instagram just yesterday and this popped up to me. Elmer T. 40th Anniversary. Now, those of you that don't know, Elmer T. is made by Buffalo Trace Mash Bill 2, meaning it's their higher rye mash bill. Our standard Elmer T. 90 proof, always single barrel, but it is filtered. This was specifically labeled uncut, unfiltered. That means we're getting a barrel proof Elmer T. Excited for that. And the bourbon enthusiasts out there are definitely going to be excited for this release. Why is this such a big deal? Bourbon fans everywhere have constantly sought after Elmer T. For years and years, it was a $30 bottle, like a budget bottle, but it was never able to be found. Because it's single barrel, because it's mash bill 2, same as Blanton's, the tater bottle, it was just so hard to find. Secondary was upwards of $200 at one point. And honestly, it was supposed to be made as a budget option, budget option. But now it's about the $60 price point and still nearly impossible to find. I've ever seen it once in the wild. What's really got people so excited though is the barrel proof part of it. Uncut, unfiltered, straight from the barrel, i.e. Blanton straight from the barrel. Think about it like that. So Blanton's and Elmer T. very similar. Both mash bill 2 from Buffalo Trace, so the higher rye mash bill. Both single barrels, and of course Blanton has that awesome looking bottle. You know what I mean? That tater bottle that we all wanted when we first got into bourbon for sure. But think about Blanton's compared to Blanton's straight from the barrel. Like, it's just completely amplified to a whole nother level. That uncut, unfiltered that Blanton straight from the barrel has, it gives you a much better mouthfeel, much better finish, and generally a much better flavor profile because of that higher proof. At least for those of us that are into bourbon for a while. I'm expecting the same thing from Elmer T. Now that we're getting a barrel-proof version of Elmer T. It's going to be just completely amplified to another level, and that's immediately where my mind went when I heard that it was going to be released. So over the years, there have been a couple different releases of Elmer T. Just recently, over the last few years, they actually had the Elmer T. 100-year tribute bottle, which was a kind of commemorative bottle to Elmer T.'s 100th birthday, or would have been 100th birthday. That was pretty much just straight Elmer T. just amplified to 100 proof. As far as I remember, I don't think that was unfiltered or any kind of barrel proof expression like that. Of course, it was 100 proof. But that was a very limited release. I was fortunate enough to be able to try a sample of that, and it was good. But not a huge difference from the standard Elmer T. Just upped in proof a little bit. Flavor was definitely better, and it was overall a better bottle for sure. Nearly impossible to find, of course, though. That's the biggest issue, and probably going to be the biggest issue with this release as well, the 40th. Will we be able to find it? I don't know. I think about this in terms of just Buffalo Trace and their limited releases in general. The BTAC line, the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, recently got added the E.H. Taylor to its line. So now we've got, 6 of them? This is as close as we're going to get, at least for the time being, of an Elmer T. Buffalo Trace Antique Collection bottle. Think about your BTACs. 2 or 3 of them, super high proof, barrel aged, barrel proof. I mean, our Handy, our Stag, our Weller. Barrel proof, old usually. Definitely those prime bottles in the prime parts of the warehouse. This is going to be as close as we can get to adding an Elmer T. to the BTAC collection, I think, in my opinion. Unless they finally decide to pull the trigger down the road, which they may, and add a, 6th bottle or 7th bottle now to the BTAC lineup. But if you think about it, this is going to meet all the criteria for what BTAC really is. Heritage in the distiller himself, E.H. Taylor, Elmer T. George T. Stagg, all those big names, people that have paved the way for bourbon up to this point. A high-proofed, probably delicious bottle, that fits that lineup. I remember seeing just multiple years ago where there was rumors or, fake news out there about Elmer T. being added to the BTAC collection. And it was a bottle, this bottle right here, actually. And really good fake. I mean, it actually looks like the E.H. Taylor bottle that's out now. So good work on that. But I think this is probably going to be as close as we can get to that bottle without it actually being officially added to the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. So what do we know and don't we know about this release? We know it's uncut. We know it's unfiltered. We know it's Elmer T. We know it's a commemorative bottle, probably a limited allocated release. All good things. The placeholder on TTB had the proof at about 120 plus. So I would anticipate all of it to be 110 to 130. You know, these are single barrel, so there's going to be barrel differences in the proof if it is truly uncut, unfiltered, which it says. What we don't know is how big is this release going to be? You know, we don't know, is it going to be 3 barrels? Is it going to be 300 barrels? You know, what are they going to be choosing from? How much? Will we ever be able to find it? That's always the biggest question, especially with Buffalo Trace. Another thing we don't know is age. They say typically the Elmer T. Lee itself is about 8 years is what I've heard. Some of the older picks back in the day, they used to do Elmer T. Lee picks, believe it or not. I've heard 10 plus on some of those. But is it going to be around that age still and just unfiltered, barrel proof? Or are we going to get an actual age statement on these, anything like that? Don't know. There was nothing on the bottle or the label that showed that on TTB, so that remains to be seen. My next question is, what is MSRP going to be? I feel like Buffalo Trace tries their best they can to put it at a reasonable price. Secondary is another story. I could see $1,000 plus on the secondary when it first hits the market, but I'd say probably between 100 and 300. So think like the BTAC line as far as price goes. A few years back, BTAC kind of hovered between $99 and $200 as far as the release, and that was at retail, of course. I could see a similar trajectory with this one, you know, where they want to price it about 150 maybe, since it is a limited release, which distilleries are now doing all over the place. But will we ever be able to find it? Will we ever see it? It's going to depend on how many bottles they put out and what distribution is going to look like. I'm hoping we'll get a chance to see it, even if I just see it on a shelf and I don't get to buy it because of price. But this day and age, I can't be supporting secondary prices at retail stores. You know, I want to support my local places, but if they're going to be marking bottles up so high, secondary prices, I just can't pull the trigger anymore. So let's talk flavor expectations on this. I kind of got into it a little bit when I was talking about the Blantons. Elmer T. Lee in general is a very solid budget bottle. Supposed to be budget bottle, like everyday drinker, you know? It's Buffalo Trace profile, mashed bill to a little bit higher rye. You get a slight spice, slight oak is what I typically get on it. But given that it's still Buffalo Trace, it's still very, very creamy, very easy sipping, and cherry forward, like a lot of Buffalo Traces are. Now let's talk the 40th, where it's going to be barrel proof. I fully anticipate this to be like a Blanton straight from the barrel. Like I said, I just think it's going to be everything amplified, everything concentrated, and as long as they keep the age similar, or maybe even higher since it's a limited release, it'd be in for some good stuff, I think. So at the end of the day, this is the biggest news we've had out of Buffalo Trace since the addition of E.H. Taylor to the BTAC collection. I think a lot of enthusiasts, daily drinkers, just people new to bourbon, they know Buffalo Trace. They know the name Elmer T. Lee. And this is going to be something that all of us are going to want to try. Will we ever get a chance to? I'm not going to hold my breath for it. But I want to hear from you guys. What do you think? You think this will ever show up? Have you guys heard any more details than what I just saw in initial look and initial thoughts on this? I want to hear from you. You guys had Elmer T. Lee? Do you like it? If not, what's your favorite Buffalo Trace product in general? Appreciate you guys watching the video today. Thank you so much for being here. Stay insane.